Yeah.
Welcome to a very special masterclass coming to you live from Point Blank here in Hoxton, East London. My name's Luke Hopper, and today I'm joined here in the studio by Rob Gallagher, aka Earl Zinger, to discuss his new album project, the William Adamson LP, and to get a bit of an insight into his work in the studio. So Rob is a British singer and musician who's been experimenting with a range of different styles since the late 80s, the likes of trip hop, of jazz, as well as a whole host of electronic music. Rob's also here to talk about his new project, the William Adamson LP, which came out last month on Giles Peterson's Brownswood Recordings. So we're going to chat about the album and also get just a bit of a background on the project and to try and get a bit of a behind the scenes look, really. Also, for all of you guys watching at home, it's your chance to get involved, so make sure you do get posting in the chat room. Any questions that you've got, just post up in there and we'll do our best to run through everything at the end of the session. So Rob, welcome along to Point Blank.
Hello Luke, thank you.
No problem at all. The first thing, just before we get into the new project, I was wondering if you could just give us a bit of an insight into your background, really. You know, how things started for you and how you know, music came to be such a big part of your life, really.
Yeah, well, I guess at school is where you first, I suppose, start getting into the music that was around then. For me, and the age I am, I suppose the first real, I caught the tail end of punk. Mm-hmm. You know, we were quite young, but, you know, we were kind of 10, 11-year-olds, but we kind of got that filtering. So the first big thing, I suppose, was soul and that kind of, you know, there was a DJ on called Greg Edwards, who you used to tune into his radio show. And the big difference then to now was you actually had to seek, like literally seek stuff out then. Now, you know, you can almost listen to everything and it's the different bits there then. I mean, there was a lot of controversy over black music getting on the radio. You know, there was definitely a reggae show, a kind of soul show, but you had to make sure you were tuned in. And then there were the pirates, and that whole culture was what a lot of people gravitated to. So that would have been kind of early 80s, and then the whole two-tone thing was kind of going on, which kind of launched you into ska, and obviously John Peel was. That's why people have such an affection for him through my age, I suppose, because you would tune in at 10 o'clock, and because it was Radio 1, it was national, and you could listen and really get. Well, I suppose it was an education, you know, from kind of stuff like Misty and Roots, which be kind of reggae, right the way over to kind of punk, right the way over to some, you know. So that was all, I suppose, my entrance point into.
That's a shift from, you know, what you talked about, you know, originally about the kind of set shows. You know, here's your reggae show, here's your soul show, and then John, I guess, brings it together and brings a very, very wide spectrum of stuff into the period he's on air. You could definitely, you know, pick up everything from kind of Joy Division to, you know, something, you know, really outward bound. That, you know, but it all seemed to make sense, and it was all experimenting and all trying to find a new kind of, you know, no matter what it was called, and identity was very important then as well. As it is now, but maybe it was more. I mean, you could definitely tell then, you know, at school who was into what by how they were dressed. You can't do that as much now. But I mean, details are all still really important. But then, tribal identity to your music was quite important. However, there was always discretions. Like I would be dressing like a kind of golfer and going to kind of clubs like that, but at the same time with my friends listening to kind of Joy Division and other stuff when you get home from that. So, you know, there's various discrepancies, and you'd kind of, you know, go into other scenes and see what was there. But I think that probably, you know, it can't be kind of underestimated how important that was
you know, when you were about kind of 18, 19 in those days to now.
Yeah,
you know.
definitely. And how about your, you know, your involvement getting into writing and, you know, working with different bands? I know you were kind of with Galliano, with our own ski, Oakenfall, and also the Two Banks of Four. How did you kind of get involved in those projects, you know, following on from those early days?
Well, that was later. So coming out of school, I guess I had a wonderful teacher at school who was an English teacher who brought us to see the dub poets and get us into. So my spark was probably a lyrical one, and wanted to kind of pursue that and find out about that. And from that brings you into other play. I think music is always finding starting points and things that spark you, and then I mean, either going sideways, who else is doing it, or going backwards, where's it come from? So for me, it was that was quite an important thing. At the same time, you know, all stuff like the Jam, and obviously that was pop music, but it was pop music in a way that it was popular but meant a lot. So in the playground you would be knowing about that, about this, and that was important to know about, you know, so we would be going to see those kind of bands as well. So coming out the other side of that, I didn't ever go to music college, you know, we were in, and everyone was in a band of some sort, you know, wasn't maybe breaking any molds or doing any great things, but the ambition was there. But yeah, so doing that, you know, playing guitars and things. Then, you know, obviously hip hop came along, and the club scene had always been going as well, and it was what was called jazz funk, which was kind of anything, molded into kind of club music, and there was lovers rock, and those clubs kind of played soul and kind of not really old R&B, because it was all quite modern music then. There was the northern soul scene and the rockabilly scene, and which were into old musics, but what I was into, I suppose, was quite new stuff, essentially American stuff. And then the whole Brit stuff kind of, and there was Brit funk that was quite important. And then it was kind of, you know, Light of the World and High Tension and those kind of bands, Freeze. And that was quite important. And because it was actually people, you're kind of, you know, who were a bit older than you doing that kind of stuff. So that, I suppose, gave us a door opening into, well, you can do this kind of music. So later, a few years later, I guess, when we're a little older, you know, because you keep, I suppose, abreast and are influenced by the stuff that's happening. And then as you get into the mid-80s, I guess it was rare groove was quite important. And kind of met Giles in the God, when did I meet him? God, early 80s, far too long ago. But that was through pirate radio and that whole culture. So the soul scene and that whole thing was essentially around pirate radio, and you would listen to pirate radio, which would have adverts, and the adverts would give you the record shops, the clothes shops.
The parties, I guess, as well.
Of course, and there would be, you know, Horizon radios trained to Yarmouth. And so you would all be on there, you know, it was like, and then as we got older, we then went into pirate radio as well. So we were doing that. So all the while, by osmosis, I suppose, you're just sucking up and soaking up various things that are happening.
And becoming a part of it yourself, I guess.
Becoming a part of it, yeah, and you know, because it was quite a well, I suppose there was a lot of people into it, but at the same time, you got to know the people. You went to the warehouse here, or the party here, or the club here. There was a very important club, Nicky Holloway, who a few years later would the whole acid house thing would explode in that club. And that club was called the Royal Oak on Tooley Street, and in the downstairs, the soul, the modern soul, would be playing by Paul Oakenfold, Danny Rampling, Nicky Holloway, and upstairs would be Giles and a guy called Chris Bangs. And that was one, and it brought in people from the suburbs as well. It was in London Bridge, and there was that particular scene going on. And then around about 87, they went to Ibiza and then came back,
Fable
and
story,
Acid House exploded, which for us was quite interesting because it was we considered ourselves the kind of left field, little musical left field characters, and you know, having our little spliffs and being kind of, and then suddenly they came back with a new, you know, Balearic as well, but you know, basically Blair. And then they were off, and I remember that, you know, there was gigs in odd places then. Like Nicky would do the. What did he play? Well, the first time I was aware of it really was the Natural History Museum. There was a gig in the Natural.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
They used to be in London Zoo. He used to do the Natural History Museum, and this was the first time parties and things were being done. But this was pre-Acid House, and then you know, one of those times I remember seeing kind of Danny with his hands in the air. What's he on? What's that? Oh, it's a new drug. It's called it. Really? Yeah. So there was all that going on. And basically because they did it a bit before us, then we didn't want to go that way. But the basic conversation on a creative one we always come back to is that if then we had, you know, got into that scene and started more doing electronic and more being influenced more by Acid House, we would have probably ended up in a kind of Weatherall area and doing that stuff. As it is, because we were a bit late on it, I mean, a bit late, you know, 3 months or something, but at that age, it's quite important that
definitely.
you're not
3 months is a lifetime.
Exactly. We decided to do our own thing, and so with the, you know, and it was all the same people we knew, so, but with the energy, I guess, of Acid House, you know, tried to do something else, you know. So that's basically, and I suppose picking up the mic in clubs, so the whole, from hip hop and reggae, you get the whole MCing thing. So we were doing that, and then from there, I guess it was sampling, and because of Rare Groove and Dingwalls, we were in touch with all the old Roy Ayers stuff, and London was really the place that was doing that then. And we were, I guess we were exposed to all those breaks and all those things very early on, so we started sampling, and then would do lyric, but we were trying to sample differently to how the Americans were sampling.
Right.
And
trying to put some identity on it, I guess.
Trying to put what we'd been listening to. I mean, I you know, you didn't hear really Roy Ayers being kind of sampled in that way. And then one of the great things was sampling him and then actually getting him on the first album, you know, and meeting Roy Ayers. I mean, there's this guy that had done all that 70s music and doing that. And then, I mean, there was a mad thing. There was a group called The Last Poets, you know, which were a kind of revolutionary poetry rap thing from Harlem. And we, you know, Giles announced in '88 or something, you know, playing The Last Poets. No one was playing The Last Poets, you know, and suddenly he was in London, a guy called Jalal, and called up, and there's a whole story about that. And then, so we met them. So you were making all these mad hookups. So you felt creatively that you could do something and that you should do something, but, you know, rather than copying anything or doing anything, just borrowing lots of bits from everywhere, which I guess is what everyone does. And making your own thing. So that's what we basically decided to do, and writing tunes around breaks and lyrically driven, which you know, which was, I suppose, credible for a few years, but then, like everything, it becomes a blueprint, and you know, the male rapped or half sing Jade verse into a female chorus, uplifting female chorus, got boring quite quickly. So then we tried other things and kind of, you know, found people like Shuggy Otis, who's an LA kind of, I'd call him quite a visionary, who's just been doing gigs again recently, who was in between a kind of Sly Stone funk and a rock kind of sensibility. and would experiment with stuff and styles and find a way in the middle of a lot of things, really.
Mm-hmm.
And the middle's an interesting place to be because you don't come down here, you don't come, so you're not actually selling to anywhere, and a lot of things fall down the gap. But we didn't learn that lesson, and we went straight for the middle, and fell down loads of gaps. But that's basically where and then I suppose from learning how they were writing tunes, trying to write tunes in a more classic way, coming out of that, and then deliberately then you hit Sun Ra and kind of then, wow, what's that?
Yeah.
You know, and then I guess trying to, you know, after you've tried to write in a classic song-based way, then trying to ditch it all and start again and completely kind of trying to maybe just take creativity instead of any structured way to approach it. So whether you approach it through a break, or whether you approach it through just humming something, or whether you're approaching it through, I mean, I think a lot of songwriters hear a song and someone else doing something, get inspired by that, try to do a version, knowing that, I mean, I think I've done a lot of that, knowing that my version won't be like their version or as good in many ways, but that gives you something else to maybe... I
think it's that spark that you mentioned, you know.
Yeah, I think you've got to be aware of roughly where you're trying to go, but at the same time embracing the accidents of songwriting, and the accidents the accidents that happen in the studio are really important as well. I think it's you know, okay, we're trying to get this snare sound like whoever, you know, kind of like that Most Def. Oh, it hasn't gone quite like that, it's gone something else. Now embrace that.
But I like it.
Does it say, as long as it's good, it doesn't have to be exactly like that. And then that suddenly you start accidentally going down a different course. But if you can be relatively confident that your accidents are bringing you somewhere.
I think flexibility is a must, you know, definitely. Also, so I mean, let's kind of bring things up to today and the new album project. It's a pretty kind of interesting concept, you know, drawing on people and places and stories from Suffolk in particular. How did the original kind of idea for it come about? How did that come to be? I mean, has the place been an inspiration for you in the past?
The Two Banks of Four, which is another project I do with Demas, Dilip Harris, has always been up there. I mean, the story is that we got an arts funded grant a few years ago, and one of the stipulation, I mean, it was quite a wide berth for a stipulation, but it was the east of England because the studio was up there, so we'd mixed Two Banks of Four albums.
So you'd spent a lot of time there anyway.
Exactly, an old barn up there. We decided that was the place we could centre on, and we through a lot of authors, I suppose, who, you know, everyone from Will Self to kind of a guy Ian Sinclair and kind of other authors that are quite influenced by topography and the actual land itself, whether it be Brick Lane or wherever, has a certain spirit and characteristics. We thought that might be an interesting place to start the kind of creative kind of pulse to actually get something going there. So we divided the land up.
Right.
So around Middleton, where the studio was, we kind of went northways to Lowestoft, down to a place called Orford in about 20 miles.
Right.
And then decided that would be the inspiration. So we just started reading stuff up around that specific area of land.
And this is before any writing's taken place. You kind of.
This is before any music's taken place.
Yeah.
It's so it's just kind of getting a feel. I mean, music invokes a mood, I suppose. You know, whatever kind of music it is. So I guess it's kind of reading around. At the same time, you know, galvanizing your kind of feel as to where you want to go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you know, we'd be making tape, but because you know each other quite well, you kind of know the tastes a little bit.
Second guess one another, and you know what's
A
coming.
little bit, although I guess that is the dangerous part,
Yeah.
and the good part all at the same
yeah.
time. But I remember Demas making up a you know, maybe 20 strong kind of tunes, from kind of Tom Waits to, you know, right over to other kind of sap stuff and kind of you know, other electronic stuff. Anyway, so he made 20 kind of different tunes there. So we had a kind of basis of where we were going to go with it musically, and then just started reading up and odd stuff you find on the internet about it, and then he'd got a lot of people he knows. You just hear hearsay and stories, and I guess it's evoking not. You're not trying to make a historical exactitude about this happened then, and the Peasants' Revolt was then, and then it went. You know, you can write songs about that, but sometimes I think you almost hit a nail on the head by being a little more ambiguous about, you know, hearsay and myth. And maybe something's true, maybe it isn't true, maybe it doesn't matter.
I think it's a more interesting journey, isn't it? Yeah.
It's an interesting journey, and you maybe actually start feeling something and get to grips with something that is maybe, you know, under the carpet and under people's psyches, that makes the spirit of an area as much as the facts.
Right.
You know, the facts can speak to you know, as a certain kind of semblance of getting a grasp on something, and maybe they can hinder as well. So maybe understanding's hindered as much by definites as it's helped. And I think music, you know, like Sun Ra did, you know, you don't have to actually physically go to the moon. You can you can get out in your mind and whoa, what's that space and time, and we're, you know, and off we go. And music, you know, isn't about the X factor and singing on point. The music is about exploring all these hidden things and hinted at things and talked about things.
The maybes and the ifs rather than the, you know. Yeah,
and that's why it's so important. It can encompass all the discipline about, you know, this is timing, and you're either out of tune or you're out of timing, or are you? And then you start playing with all that stuff, and then what it evokes in you. And as a human, maybe you've got other bits that aren't so definite, and you know, there's a lot of bits that you know, you chip the corners off and see what, and then suddenly you're sculpting something that you didn't even know you were sculpting. So, and that all came into it as well. So, so we started writing through various points, through having loops, through having. I mean, we've worked a lot, so we've got a lot of offcuts. You know, there's kind of all around the barn floor. There is there's loads of stuff that we didn't use.
Stuff to draw on,
Exactly. That song had a good outro, and now it got sawn off and it's lying over there. So you pick that outro up, and maybe that lyric over there that you never use, you pull out of the woodwork and stick them. Oh, that's interesting, and off you go. So they came in from various angles, and actually, you know, writing stuff. And for Two Banks of Four, I suppose there was because you get into those set ways of working. So it was keyboard led, and then I would bring it to Ski, who would actually tell me what chords I was doing, and maybe it wasn't quite a good idea to do that, but that would sound better. So there was that way of doing it, whereas with this project it was much more guitar led. Right. And so I got quite into kind of like the Keith Richards kind of tuning the guitar into G, and then some, and then tuning and the B down to A, and just doing kind of and writing around that. I got a kind of quite like the whole Jack White thing and the Bo Diddleys, and you just get a simple kind of string and start playing it with a slide, and kind of, so basically trying to change up the way we were working, and see what we arrived at that then. So got a load of stuff together, and then once we thought we'd assembled about 15 tunes, then what we wanted to do was make it sound like an album, make it sound like, you know, it was one kind of piece of work. So we got Tom Skinner, who's a great drummer we know, Tom Herbert from The Invisible, who plays bass, and I mean, they all play everything. But and then another guy we found who was basically a blues player in clubs and pubs, where he's actually going back to that almost pre-40s, almost 30s way of the blues player in the whorehouse or the shebeen, who's making them dance just with a guitar and a foot stomp. So we found him through brother Marco Nelson, who used to be in the Young Disciples, who was running a night in the borough called Tom Rodwell. So we went up with the three Toms. And then they basically translated the ideas and the tunes into about 12 tracks, doing the vocals. Some of them didn't have lyrics finished. A lot of them did, and I'd sing the lyrics as they were playing. So we got those, recorded those, and then brought it back to London, and then did overdubs of percussion, vocals, basic things like that, a few electronic things, and then mixed it.
Right. I think you've also brought a project or a couple of projects along as well, right?
Got a few, yeah. I mean, so from what I was saying, I mean, this first tune is called The Rings of Saturn. So actually, this is one of those offcuts. We did a Brazilian album that never got released. That's still, if anyone wants to do a Brazilian album, we have one ready to go. But there was this guy called Jose Maro, who was a Brazilian guitarist, 70s, who was doing quite guitar-based, melodic, but that kind of, I like Brazilian where it's quite melancholy as well.
Right.
And you get that feel of some denseness to the chords and some... So, you know, it feels like no other music. It could only be made there.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's quite, you know, in a way, it's not totally kind of Brazilian, or, you know, it's not a definite batucada. It's not a definite kind of, I mean, their whole legacy. But so we did something like that. Now that was the first guitar bit that I'd done. Demas had put this behind it, and. I was just kind of, I suppose I was listening back to sound quite like the groove of that. But then on this tune, it goes off into totally other bits.
Yeah.
And that's quite Jose Maro-ish, as in there's orchestral bits and there's different arrangements.
Right.
So there's a groove there, but the whole arrangement and the whole orchestral bit is quite important. But for the project we were doing, we were more, I suppose, doing bluesy-based tunes and stuff like that. So that's the bit I was interested in.
Yeah, yeah.
So obviously the guitar is there, but I can use the... So now that sounds to me that could be anything from Beefheart to anything else, that kind of thing. So basically snipped that and got the... So now I've got a loop of stuff we've done, but essentially it's that. Then I start just, and then this is how, so this is an example of how a quick something happens like that. So then I just start, now I haven't got any words now, but it's like just get the mic out. I think a lot of the time it just starts. You see, some of them are words and some of them are just noises. So I start playing this and just get the noises. You know, shower, blah, 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 you know, so you're just off on that.
You get a texture and a feel for something, and you kind of bring
and I quite like doing, I do a lot of that now and then, listen back and almost start writing what you think you've said.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is, like, I think definitely early on, Galliano and stuff like that, it was much more you know, I was young and under the illusion I had something to say.
Right.
I've since found that, of course, that's not true at all. But at the time, I wanted a definite
message or something.
It was a message. It was almost like a polemic. I mean, it was. I mean, it's funny. Thatcher's just died, and you know, for us, it was all very defined, left and right, and definites, and the music, in a way, although Galliano was just you know, catching the last of her few years. That's how we'd grown up. You know, the 80s were definitely this and that. So lyric-wise, you know, I wanted to say this. So I'd almost have it written down. And whether or not rhythmically it fitted on the music, I didn't give a crap. This is what I wanted
make it
to
fit.
Exactly. Whereas now this is much more kind of get the feel of the loop, get the feel of the song. And then... So I'd listen to that, then start writing stuff to know. So then you get that coming up there, and now this is. So now I've actually written the words, and this song was the first. Was the first song that actually was trying to encapsulate the whole thing, rather than bit like I was telling you about the land. We suddenly found when we were leaving, it's one of those mad stories of mysticism in music, but as we were leaving after recording with the three Toms, one of them picked up some newspaper, and it was an article about this festival that was going on that had been based on the work of this German author called Siebold.
Right.
And he'd actually walked through the area that we'd kind of delineated to do our project on, and his style is like a stream of consciousness of this is related to that, is to that, is to that, is, and off he goes. It's like, and his book was called The Rings of Saturn.
Right.
So we accidentally found, after we'd done the recording and he picked up the paper, it was suddenly, what's Rings of Saturn? So we suddenly found this author. So this tune was written just after I'd found this author and read that book, which is an incredible book. Bless you, Scott. And I'd written these lyrics after doing that. So now these are much more definite. But it's essentially based on that first that first loop. And so when we came to record that, the finished version is basically the guys playing the backing track, and then you know, and then Sean Lee, another guy, Sean Lee, did overdubs as well, guitar wise, and you know, it's them doing. You know, when you actually get musicians, so you can do your loop and you can do but when you actually get musicians who are feeling each other, and you know, you can use, they can play to. I don't know if this was played to a click or not. I can't remember, but you know, you can have your little electronic backing. But then when you get musicians on there, that's when, for me, the music really comes alive as well. So
go for it. Takes and then kind of edit them all together?
He did. There was definitely a few live takes.
Was it always the band playing together? Or
I think this was all the band playing together, because we have done that before, edited different takes.
Right.
This one, I'm pretty sure, was one live take. So he came back with the bass, drums.
You get everyone in the room.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you've got the bass, the drums, the guitars, and then Sean Lee would overdub.
Right.
And then there's other, and I think the vocals, actually, we went back and used maybe some I'd done on the demo.
Okay.
As I'm remembering now. So maybe this is played to some kind of click, or he would have been there for hours trying to fix them in, which he doesn't like doing. So maybe it was, so basically that's the, that's the finished version, and it also went into this bit where it just really sinks down. and the kind of with the slide you get that swampy feel and the kind of like and it's got no chorus to this either,
right?
Which is you know, kind of interesting.
Yeah,
but you know, it's kind of, as I guess you get less into chorus and hooks, you just kind of get into the whole, you know, you don't approach music in that way.
I guess this project it's got that feel about it, I guess.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, it's not meant to be pop music. You know, it's not gonna. It's kind of. It's just meant to invoke a certain feeling and a certain mood, which you know, like I was saying before, that's what music does, I suppose. So that was one way of doing it. I play this other. This one was came from. You hear this organ. It's an old Pilgrim's organ, which was in which Dill's dad had. We had to actually, it weighs a ton, and we had to bring it to some guy in Norwich who was the only guy that could fix it.
As is the way with these things.
Yeah, exactly. But you basically play it by you've got foot pedals, so you can actually feel the air going into it, and you're pushing it out, and then you've got the pull bars, and you've got the. So Tom Herbert was playing that, and then you've got the. Tom Skinner made it, so he set himself up a drum kit, but he was going off and finding metal from the workshop,
right?
And then putting that up, so that it's a drum kit of sorts. It's like you know, everything from the anvil to if the saw makes a good twang was in there as well. And then there's double bass. Tom's playing the double bass, so they put down the drum and the double bass, I think, and then he played that pump organ over the top of that. And then I think I put the vocals on there, and then it's either Tom Rodwell or Sean Lee doing the guitar as well.
And that's obviously quite a different process.
Well, I was going to say this came from this demo that so that was kind of chopping up a loop, whereas this would have come directly from writing a tune at home. Getting Logic out, and I mean, funnily enough, this has been much more live than we kind of done before. It's been more, you know, get a drum machine, get some samples up, and work a song through kind of MIDI and through that, and then get live players on top. That's really, I suppose, what we've done with Two Banks of Four and stuff, whereas this was much more actually get them to reinterpret what we'd done. So you lose, so in a way you have to, it's jumping into the dark, because you have to trust the musicians you've got.
I guess, you have to be well aware that it is an interpretation, I guess. You know, they're translating it, but they're also going to have their own kind of twist on things.
Totally, and that which is the scary bit and the fun bit. Because obviously, if you're, I mean, that's where you've got to, I suppose, really celebrate the musicians and get them to trust. You know, so you trust that it is going to be going down the route that you want it to go, or maybe you don't even know you want it to go down there or that. But that's where, you know. Because I mean, obviously, for dance music or something, you're gonna, that bass needs to be subby and it needs to be here. So you haven't got, in a way, you can get someone to come and do something live over the top, but it's a different kind of discipline, and you're building it for a different kind of thing, which is the dance floor. And the dance floor
has rules, I guess.
The dance floor is unforgiving, as in if the production isn't there, it's not going to be banging the way it's meant to be banging. So you know, it needs different sounds. You know, if you're doing other stuff, it needs a certain sound, which this didn't. You know, so in that way, it freed it up to be much more kind of whatever was going to happen. It was going to happen,
I guess.
In a way, I mean, this is so that was the original demo of it.
Right. Okay.
So I've just got an organ sound up. Off Logic, put it there, and then just played some odd guitar kind of over time. I mean, it's much slower, hasn't got any, don't think it's got any drums on, and kind of got some...
It's interesting to hear this compared to the final versions.
Yeah, actually, it's much slower now, isn't it? I didn't realise it was. I mean, the lyrics are still there, but it's. You see, I was just in Vienna last weekend working with Richard Dorfmeister, who's doing stuff, and I'm doing stuff for his show, and he's quite at the moment into. Don't MC anything, just actually get whether they're just get songs and put them over the top of, you know, I mean, he's got some kind of remixes that are, you know, quite techie, housey stuff, right. But he wants, you know, actual lyrics now on top of those, rather than feeling a flow and getting a flow. And I was just thinking that's maybe as well, for me, I mean, it's different but actual lyrics delivered with a certain conviction can gel, you know, and can glue a demo together and a song together more than I thought they could, you know, in a way before. But but that's the demo of the other song, The Poacher.
Yeah, I mean, it is really interesting to see, you know, something in those early stages and you know, to hear about how different people coming on board and working with it really does, you know, change things and get it to this end result that can be quite different, really.
It can be different, and I think there's the especially for a project like this, the meaning of it was quite. So this song was actually about in the 1940s, 1930s. They're getting ready for the Nazi invasion, and the Nazis are just across the channel. And you know, for us who have never experienced anything like, you know, they actually thought they were going to invade. It wasn't and America's going to step in and it's going to be okay. It wasn't going to be okay, you know. And there's some documents and stuff about okay, well, we're going to be invaded, and what we need to do is set up guerrilla units around the place. So you go to the poachers and the thieves and and they're the ones who are going to have little arms dumps in the middle of the forest, who are now going to go out and at night go and snipe the kind of Nazis. And so that's what that song was actually about. So there was a concrete meaning and a definite about it all the way through. So maybe that meaning and that conviction gives a certain strength to the songwriting as well as it comes through. Yeah,
and gives it direction, and I guess everyone's got something they're working from, and yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we're actually reaching time. Yeah, so have I been rambling again? That's okay. I can do that a lot. Yeah, yeah, we are kind of just at the time. I'll just double check if we've got anybody with questions from home. In the meantime, the album's out now, right? Is that right? The album's out now, yeah. Brownswood Records, yeah. William Adamson, who was a guy called from Laxfield, so we actually used a character from one of the stories for the name of the group. So it's William Adamson, and the actual album is Under an East Coast Moon on Brownswood Records. Out now at all good stores. Yeah. Okay, we're just out of time now. If you guys, you know, if you do get any questions that we haven't had time to go through, you know, feel free to post up in the comments, and you know, we'll do our best to get through everything this week. In the meantime, do keep locked on to the YouTube channel, the Facebook page, and of course the Point Blank Plus, the magazine, where you can find details of the next masterclass we've got coming up, and also this session will be fully archived. So if you did miss anything and you want to watch everything again, you know, just head over to the YouTube channel. So that's it from us. Just say a big thank you to Rob for coming down. Thank you, Luke. Thanks for taking the time, and that's it from us. We'll see you guys very soon. So thanks for watching.